I apologize that we have kept you waiting. We went a little bit long in closed session, so thank you for your patience. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:11 p.m. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson, Mr. Rollins.
Here.
Ms. Mohammed.
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Here.
Mr. Siegel. Mr. Connor.
Here.
Ms. Stanford.
Here.
With 5 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of the Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. And before we go any further, I'd like to thank Connor Childers. He works behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. I also wish to welcome the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council's representatives who we have here today, Isabella Hernandez from Auburn and Kawaya Jackson from Guilford. I've heard it often enough, and then you're afraid you're going to say it wrong because you thought it differently. So thank you both. We will look forward to some comments from both of them later, having this being their third meeting under the superintendent's report. We're going to recognize and celebrate outstanding contribution of our students and staff. Mr. Siegel is not here, but Ms. Baer, would you please take the floor and take care of that for us? Thank you.
Good evening. Can we hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you. Pardon my laptop here. Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. So it does not appear that we have any of our state qualifiers here this evening, but we'd still like to recognize them just the same. So our fall athletics state qualifiers for IHSA boys cross country. Guilford High School sent 2 runners to the IHSA state cross country tournament after sophomore Brandon Lawson finished 7th in the 3-mile sectional race with a time of 15 minutes and 55.5 seconds. That to me sounds fast as a non-runner. That's fast, right? Pretty fast. Junior Juan Del Real came in 19th with a time of 16 minutes and 15.4 seconds. Also still very fast for 3 miles. They were the only 2 runners to compete from RPS 205 in the boys or girls class 3A championship race. At the state meet in Peoria, Brandon finished with a faster time than his state qualifying run, 15 minutes and 31.3 seconds, to finish 95th overall. And Juan also finished with a faster time of 15 minutes, 39.74 seconds, and 123rd overall. Congratulations to these outstanding student athletes, and hey, good luck next season because they're not graduating just yet. Next up, we have IHSA girls tennis. RPS 205 sent 7 girls to compete in the IHSA Class 2A state tennis tournament this year, 5 from Auburn High School and 2 from Guilford High School. Go G-Bikes. Auburn's #1 singles player, Amy Park, was the only player to make it to the second day of the tournament and ultimately finished 3-2. While this is Amy's junior year, we're looking forward to her senior season. Amy also would have qualified for the state tournament last year, but because of COVID, there was no tournament, and her freshman year in doubles play. Also from Auburn, 2 doubles teams qualified for the state tournament after finishing in 1st and 2nd place at the sectional tournament. Senior Alyssa Trapp and sophomore Addison Fang won the NIC-10 and sectional doubles titles without dropping a single set. That's a big deal in tennis. They were also the only area players to win their first round match at the state tournament, also a big deal. They ultimately finished 2-2 at state, so congratulations to those players. Auburn senior Madeline Harned and sophomore Rebecca Wang finished 2nd in sectionals and finished 1-2 at the state tournament. From that mix of players, Auburn seniors Maddie Harned and Alyssa Trapp both qualified in IHSA state tennis tournament for all of their sophomore, junior, and senior seasons. A giant deal. Congratulations to those girls. And from Guilford High School, their #1 doubles team of Anju Griffith and Mackenzie Larson, a senior and a sophomore, took 4th in the sectional tournament to qualify for state. Congratulations to all of these tennis players on an awesome season. We're again looking forward to next season with those returners. And certainly last but not least, 3 swimmers represented Rockford Public Schools over the weekend at the IHSA swim meet in Westmont, and 1 brought a medal back to Guilford High School. We're all about the hardware. Auburn High School junior Ursula Cook qualified for the state meet in the 500-yard freestyle and ultimately finished 24th in the preliminaries. Guilford High School senior Ella Gasparini qualified for state in the 200-yard medley and 100-yard breaststroke. At state, she finished 24th in the 200-yard medley and 13th in the 100-yard breaststroke and preliminary, so she just missed out on the medal competition. Guilford High School junior Michaela Durkin, this is where we're getting very excited, she qualified for the state meet in the 50-yard freestyle and the 100-yard freestyle. Her 50-yard freestyle time in the preliminary at state was good enough to advance to the finals. To make it to that second day of state is a big deal. She ultimately finished 9th in the state in the 50-yard freestyle and earned a state medal to end her season. Congratulations to Ursula, Ella, and Michaela. And as always, we like to congratulate not only these student athletes for their accomplishments and hard work, but congratulations to their families, friends, coaches, and teammates.
Thank you, Ms. Bear.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry they're not here to shake their hands, but hopefully they know how much we appreciate all the hard work they put into that. We're now at the petitions and communication portion of our meeting, where we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the right of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we're following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, public comments will be limited to 30 minutes. We have just one speaker, so that shouldn't be a problem. The board will not respond to the comments at this time, to any comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient, just one, it is not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. Two names, nope. When if you look at the clock to your left, you will see two digital clocks. One shows the total time allocated to public comment. The other shows the total time for each speaker, which is, as we said, will be two minutes. So I have one speaker this evening. It's Jeffrey Manny. And sir, there you are. Please come up to the podium. You do need to keep your mask on when you speak. And could you please, I don't know if she turned that off. Is there a light on?
It's on now.
Okay. And the mask needs to go up over here. No, we're sorry about that, but that's our policy.
Okay, so I wanted to address the school board tonight about an incident that occurred on the 9th of November. I wrote to the board on the 10th of November and sent video evidence of this occurrence at Auburn on the 12th. Jude, Tim Rollins, and June responded with some email traffic. At least by my recollection, it's up to you guys how to determine what the offense was. But man, looking through your student code of conduct, it seems to be egregious enough to fall into the category of group violence. More than one student on a side engaging in physical contact to inflict harm or inciting others to do so. Additional persons entering into the conflict, not to restrain or segregate, but to actively participate in the physical aggression. In fact, one of the faculties was, a couple of the faculty members were involved and attacked, if you want to look at it that way. So I'm just interested in what consequences to the participants, and based on your statement, you probably can't comment. But based on the student code of conduct, it looks like there's only two options: out-of-state suspension, or out-of-state, that'd be good, out-of-state suspension, or out-of-school suspension, or expulsion. And then there's a whole bunch of other things for less controversial infractions, but this was a melee. So my daughter is an educator in the school system. My son-in-law is involved as well. And she's told me about other consequences of, am I out of time? Oh, I am? Oh, crap. Okay, well, I'd just like to continue the email dialogue then, since I'm the only guy up here, and ask if there's any other initiatives besides suspension and expulsion.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett, the floor is yours.
Would you like to ask for board member comments first, Ms. McCullough?
I skipped right over you guys. I apologize. Board member comments first. Are there any board members? Okay. Good. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. The next item on the agenda, we'll go back to superintendent's comments and
Thank you, Mrs.
the floor is
McCullough.
yours.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I want to start by recognizing our board this evening. This is a time of year where we do something we should contemplate on a regular basis, that we have 7 board members who it is often misunderstood, that do this with no monetary compensation. The only compensation they receive is non-monetary, in the sense that they are public servants trying to improve the quality of education in our community. And so on behalf of our community and our administrative team, I just want to extend my extreme gratitude to all of our board members for your selfless service to our community. It's never easy to be a board member, but I would say that in my 20 plus years of public education, the last 2 years of service have been right at the tippy top of challenges, and you have performed admirably and with great interest in the quality of the experience our students have. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your service to our community and to all of the students that we serve. Much appreciated. So if we wouldn't mind, for those of us who are in the crowd, I would love to give a quick round of applause to our Board of Education during Board Member Appreciation Week. Part of that non-monetary compensation, a round of applause. Thank you. Now I would like to debut our first speaking performance from our SSAC members. They have both attended meetings throughout the month. They are serving on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and I believe we determined that, was it Isabella or Kawaya is going to go first? Isabella Hernandez from Auburn High School is going to be going first, and she will be followed by Kawaya Jackson from Guilford High School. And they are going to be taking some of our time tonight to talk about issues that they experienced as being part of the board meetings this month, as well as personal experiences that they want to highlight for the board. The floor is yours, Isabella.
Thank you, and I wanted to thank all of you guys here today for allowing me to sit in on your 3 November meetings. I learned definitely a lot. I learned the business side in the first meeting, and in the second meeting I also got to see the student side and the just like, you know, the general school side, including the students, the food service workers, and everything. So I just wanted to thank you once again for that. Probably the biggest thing that came to my mind in the first meeting was the mention of affinity groups. And I remember you guys talking about it, and I was so engaged in the topic. And through my personal experience with working with children of color this past summer at a summer camp, and finding it really, really hard to grasp the concepts because I wasn't raised in the same places that they were, or I didn't have the same color of skin, and I wasn't facing the same types of issues as they were. It was really difficult for me to really express and show my sympathy, as well as work with them very well. We didn't seem to get each other very well, but I appreciated my entire time with the children. And then once one of my coworkers, who was a person of color, was able to come in, they were able to do such a great job. They were able to communicate with the kids so much more because of those experiences. So if you take anything from this, I would love to see how affinity groups are going to be used within the schools in the years coming. And then just to mention, I would love to see how, you know, children from the kindergarten stage all the way up to their 12 years in Rockford Public Schools, what you guys are going to do to really create a good experience for them, because it's not just for you're not just here for the students today and the seniors today like myself. You are here for the students who are kindergartners now, who are going to be going all the way up to the senior level, and that's what I think is very important. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And now I would like to turn it over to Kawaya. And Kawaya actually has some slides she would like to share. So Connor, if you could pull those up. And I believe she has some handouts as well.
Okay, so hi, my name is Kawaya Jackson. I'm a student representative from Guilford. And thank you for having me today, you guys. I really appreciate it. I've been here before. So today we will be discussing the gender stereotype threat. And yeah. So as Ms. McCullough had read to us, every student shall receive fair and equitable treatment without discrimination in every aspect of our educational system. So this includes gender rights as well. So I think it's time we give our girls a fair opportunity. Girls like this, because this is what we're here for. So the gender stereotype threat is the risk of confirming a negative stereotype of a group of which she is a member, also known as the girls are bad at math stereotype. And so this is what I'm here to fight today. To analyze the correlation between female minority in a classroom, in a math classroom, and their performance, I conducted a 2-year study to track this. Here are the results of my study. So I found that female students, when they're in the majority in a classroom, scored at 81.2%. Well, in minority, they scored 5.7% less at 75.5. So what this data is telling me is that our female students struggle when they are the minority in a classroom due to their stereotype that girls are bad at math. So I propose a remedial process. I want the work that we do today to carry our women into the hierarchy of tomorrow. So that means training our staff now, conducting more research like mine to further assess our inequalities within our district. And then I propose a one-to-one math and science classroom to eliminate this stereotype and inequality. So I want to continue this discussion, and of course, I'd always be willing to help and willing to do more research. So here's my email, talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kawaya, and thank you very much, Isabella. I appreciate both of you attending our meetings this month, and for the thought and effort you put into preparing your presentations. Thank you both. Now what I would like to do is continue on with a conversation about our district system-wide framework. So I'm going to ask Connor to pull up my slide deck, and I'm going to grab the controller. So normally we just skip right by the title slide, but I want you to notice there are pictures of adults in our district office. And there's a reason for that, because today we are going to be talking about what the district office can do to support our system-wide framework. We call these our standards of service, and Mr. Zedeker is going to come in a little bit to explain those in greater detail. But I want to remind everybody why we have a system-wide framework and why we think it's important. I want to go back to our a hypothetical map of our school district, where if we look at red, yellow, green, and blue schools, and wanting all of our schools to be green and blue, and that not being our current reality, that we eventually want this to be our reality. And what that means is we don't want zip code to be a determinant of academic achievement in our district, and we know we have work to do to achieve that. The system-wide framework is designed to help all schools improve and to help the district really be focused on helping all schools improve. Really, if you boil down what the work really attempts to accomplish, is we believe that every student deserves to have success regardless of zip code. We believe that every staff member deserves to be really clear on how they can help, whether it's in a school or a district setting. And everyone deserves to have the support they need to be successful, whether we're talking about the adults or the children in our system. So again, what is the system-wide framework? It is what we do to support students in the largest sense. First and foremost, we are committing at the highest level, at the board and superintendent level, to goals that are baked right into my contract to ensure that we are improving in third grade literacy, numeracy, middle school on track, freshmen on track, and graduation rate. And you can see we have 3-year targets that the board and I have agreed to. What does that actually look like as we break it down beyond that highest level? We think there are 3 interlocking circles. One is continuous improvement, which is using data in a school scorecard so we can know how each school, all 41 of our schools and our 3 charters, are going to have a scorecard that we can continuously improve on. They're all going to have a starting point, and we want to see them all continue to make that progress from red and yellow to green and blue, or if they're already blue and green, to stay there. Productive relationships, we want to make sure that all of the time we spend together maximizes the use of meetings, maximizes the improvement process time. And then finally, this is what we're going to really hone in on today, is clear expectations. We want to make sure that schools have very clear standards of practice so that students have guaranteed experiences, and we want our district office to have very clear standards of service for those schools to make sure we're delivering on that. So again, a reminder of what that means for schools. The standard of practice and scorecard, this is quite an eye chart from where everyone is sitting, but above the mountains are the actual metrics that are baked into the scorecards at different levels for academics and instruction, and below the red, blue, green, and orange are the standards of practice by grade level that coincide with those. So the idea is, when we evaluate a school, we're looking at how are they doing on the actual state metrics, but also how are they performing on the guaranteed practices that we want to provide for our students. So the standards of practice and the scorecard blend together. We also do that with productive relationships and strategic decision making, and we've gone over this before. We will have a much more thorough conversation later with the board, again, of how we want this system to be implemented in terms of how we're evaluating the performance of schools and ensuring that that continuous improvement is happening. An example of what this would look like, so we can zoom in from that really densely populated document we were looking at. Here's an example of how it might work for elementary. You can see that third grade reading and third grade math are the universal targets around quality instruction. Those are the superintendent contract goals, and we want schools to be focusing on those things. And then you can see some of the different metrics that are baked in under quality instruction pertaining to reading, writing, and different math scores on state tests. Then you can see those same targets for third grade reading and third grade math are connected to things like units of study, reading horizons, MTSS supports for our students, and number talks for math. Those are examples of how the practices feed in there. So at the end of the day, if we're doing the practices well, and if we are improving year over year on the school scorecard, we should see schools making progress over time. So that is the school's job. Remember, I talked about it's important that everyone knows their role, and our schools want to improve, but they deserve our support as they are working with students. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zedeker to talk a little bit about how our district office is committed to providing very clear standards of service, and he's going to give us a high-level overview of that now.
Yeah, as Dr. Jarrett alluded to, the big piece to the system-wide framework that we haven't updated the board yet on are our standards of service. And just a little bit about the process. You've heard the process in terms of how we've come through and established our standards of practice, where really we listen to the stakeholders around these topics and what's important to them. We gather some really key themes and insights from that feedback, and then we turn it into a document and create some action from those key themes and insights. In terms of the standards of service, we really worked with all of our departments and to come up with all of the things that they do that really support schools. And as you can imagine, there are hundreds of things that central office departments do on a day-to-day basis to support schools. Over the summer, then, we brought principals in to kind of review those, to find out what was really important to them and how that was formatted, and for the principals' view and perspective on what we call that shared accountability. If we have accountability measures for schools, what does it look like for accountability measures for the central office? And what we found from the principals over the summer was to give them a list of 300 different things that central office folks do to support schools was very overwhelming for them and didn't really serve them and their needs. And so we went back to the drawing board and kind of refined and took what they gave us as feedback. And what we've come up with are, and what we'll go over tonight, are are 8 large standards of service that are really interdepartmental. And at the end of the day, our schools care that we offer and provide the services to the staff and students in order for them to be successful. And so the format of what you'll see for our standard of service is we'll review the actual standard, the large standard of service, and then you're going to see really what we call kind of the above the water departments that are really front facing in that standard of service. Now, everybody has a tie into the standard of service, but from feedback from the principals, we wanted to make sure that we really highlight the departments that really we use kind of an iceberg theme, where that above the water line is what you see, but there's so much going on below, behind the scenes, where that's where we develop some of our goals and our OKRs for our individual departments to feed up through our standards of service. So standards of service 1, the district follows established processes, timelines, and systems so that teachers, support staff, and students have the resources and materials they need when they need them. Pretty large standard and involves many departments. So as you see kind of our above the water departments that are embedded into this standard of service, we have education services, financial services, human resources, our ITIS team, schools team, and security. Standard of service 2. Faculty and staff have defined roles in the district's multi-tiered system of support plan connected to the success of the whole child and in alignment with the district's universal goals. So our above the water departments that are front facing with this standard of service, again, our education services, human resources, and our schools leadership team. Standard 3, our schools are clean and well maintained with all work orders addressed in a timely manner. And I like to highlight this standard because I think oftentimes we may forget how important this is to our principals and to our students in terms of having facilities that are in proper condition for learning. And so this was something that we heard from the principals as wanting as a part of our large 8 standards. And it's more than just what you would think from facilities in terms of a well-maintained operating building. We have our education technology staff, facilities, of course, ITIS, IT security, and our security departments that all play a critical role in this standard of service. Standard 4, professional learning available for all staff who support students, aligned to the universal goals and standards of practice, and accessible and easy to navigate. Certainly our talent development team is the hub here, but as they work with content experts, that would be individuals in our education services department, human resources, and our schools team. Standard 5, surveys and other data collection tools drive both customer service improvement and school improvement. So this is how we generally get feedback, and of course we'll be updating the board on employee engagement, but we have employee satisfaction, we have the school scores that principals can get to action plan around to make sure that we're continually looking at what our climate and culture is like for staff, for parents, and students. So the above the water departments here for standard 5 our communications team, human resources, and our schools leadership team. Standard 6, access to high quality, diverse staff members throughout the district, but with special attention to schools and classrooms. We all know that recruitment is happening and needs to happen through all of our departments and with all of our employees in terms of being our best salespeople. But in terms of our above the water departments that really are the front facing here is our equity team, human resources, and our schools leadership. Standard 7, accurate, timely, and relevant reports, dashboards, and corresponding systems will be delivered to all schools to meet the needs of their end users. 2 big departments here are information services team and human resources. And then the final standard, standard 8, 3 times per year, the central office learns about and responds to the needs of each school during school improvement cycles to target deficit or high priority items aligned to the universal goals. Now, this standard is unique in terms of above the water departments. The 3 departments listed here are going to be constant and mainstays. But as we work with schools, as they identify their needs through the standards of practice to the universal goals and our system-wide framework, the supporting departments are going to change depending on what the school's needs are. And so the key with the school improvement cycles is the central office really rallying with the principal around what the data tells us the need for that school is. And it no longer is just kind of siloed work, but we really rally the troops from central office departments to go to schools to make sure that we're creating a plan with the principal to support that building and what they need. So kind of what's next on the standard of service? As we finally have kind of landed on our large 8 standards of service, part of that mutual accountability is that we need to hear back from building leaders and how we're doing at central office and how we're delivering on those standards. So 2 times each year, our principals, assistant principals, and deans at the building level will be filling out a survey. And really this survey is going to measure how well the central office staff are at delivering those 8 standards, and also how are the central office departments at providing customer service to the field. Because it's one thing to have some technical answers and technical responses to the problems, but how are we interacting and what is our customer service from the central office to the buildings? This typically will happen in October and April, but this year, as being the first year as we finalize our standards of service, the first survey will happen at the all-principal meeting in December. And so we'll have it December and April for us to be able to have formative information and data to bring back to our departments and our teams. Additionally, in terms of some feedback loop, we are also creating a Let's Talk landing page specifically for principals that have the opportunity to give us iterative real-time feedback on where the central office can improve or celebrate central office for what they've done on the standards of service and support for the building.
Thanks, Matt. And I would just like to close with talking about breaking down those 3 big ideas and letting you know what's coming next. So as we finalize the first draft and give it to the principals of the standards of service and the survey, we will be sharing that with the board, probably through a board update in December. By June 30th, we are going to be aligning all job descriptions and evaluation instruments, and that ties back to every staff member needing to know their role. So we have to make sure that whether I work in the central office, whether I am involved in a school, in any role, that I know how my evaluation instrument, my job description, and my professional development is aligned to these important services and practices we're providing to help us get better results. Also, by June 30th of this year, of the 2021-22 school year, we want to make sure that we have the data systems we need in place, fully designed to make sure that schools have the systems they need to make sure they can be successful tracking down student data that is necessary to be successful. And we will be aggregating all of this in kind of a reference or a handbook so that we can see where this all lays also in June of 2022 to make sure we're clear about roles. And then the board's work is really coming up here. Every student deserves success. The board is going to be, over the next 6 months, developing conversations about what a 3-, 4-, and 5-year school designation looks like. We've been waiting to do that, and now is the time, because we are going to have baseline data. Although we are still in a pandemic, we still at least have our students in person, so we have the ability to really, I think, have a better measurement. And we'll also be talking about how that applies to our special programs charter and all neighborhood schools and what that means if they're a 3-, 4-, and 5-year school. Remember, we've talked for over a year now about a 3-year, 4-year, and a 5-year track. So this will be the next step of the work that the board will do collaboratively, but take the lead on as we determine what next steps look like. So with that, I thank you. This is what the district office's role is. The board's role, I think, is increasingly becoming clear. But the ultimate thing we are trying to accomplish is to make sure that all 44 of our schools are successful. Our district office is totally focused on supporting that work so that we move the needle on having all of our schools becoming blue and green, and that we successfully achieve those universal targets and hopefully exceed those universal targets that we've laid out before the board. Thank you.
Were there questions from board members? Okay, and I heard you say that we will actually be able to see the scorecards that the schools have?
Yes, we will be sharing the school. As you develop those 3, 4, and 5 year targets, you're going to need to see what those scorecards look like, and that will be a part of that work over the next 6 months. You also, in December, are going to get to see an actual copy of how we're accountable as a district office. So I want the board not to just hear generally about what that mutual accountability looks like. I want you to actually see it. So we'll be sharing both with you as the year continues.
Okay. I kind of had a targeted question. We looked at an elementary school. I don't know why I had in my head that we were going to be actually seeing what the full scorecard ended up looking like at this point, but I look forward to that in December. When when we started work 10 years ago looking at our high schools, I think this was this pre-academy or post-academy? Are academies part of the scorecard? I mean, are they being evaluated on the academies? Are they actually a part of the scorecard?
The academies live in the standards of practice for high schools, and they live in the early college experience, dual credit, industry credential standard.
So the answer is no, not specifically on academies. They're being evaluated as part of the other components.
They're being evaluated as a part of the other components, yes. We kind of looked at, the most meaningful component of the national standards of practice and pulled that into our local standards of practice.
Okay. And the other thing that was really big when we entered this journey a decade ago was the PLCs. Are they part of the evaluation?
The structure of the PLC, no. The output of their work through the way that they use data to target student needs and through the MTSS, those are all included in the standards of practice.
Okay, but not the
Not the actual
themselves.
structure of the
That's
PLC itself.
Okay. And are teacher evaluations part of our scorecard?
I think I can weigh in on that. This is McCulloch. I think what we're trying to accomplish with teacher evaluations, principal evaluation, superintendent evaluation, district office evaluation is we want to make sure that successfully implementing the standards of service or practice are translated into the existing evaluation documents. So in other words, I don't anticipate, we will still use Danielson for teacher evaluations, but as we interpret Danielson, there will be plenty of room to highlight how we are impacting. For example, if we're talking about an elementary teacher, implementation of Reading Horizons and getting the proper professional development around that, there are different parts of as we get better and better, we want to see evaluation aligned with what we're emphasizing in the scorecard. And the reason that's important is we don't want to have a situation where only the superintendent is accountable at the district level, selfishly, and we also don't want to have a situation where only the principal is accountable at the building level. So the more work we do to align job descriptions, evaluation tools, and professional development to the standards of practice at the building level and the standards of service at the district level, the more I believe we will see those be the main things that are emphasized and see the universal targets moving.
Apologize. For edification this year, I know we were sent an email. We will be doing teacher evaluations.
That is correct. The only thing we are not doing with teacher evaluations is we have made the yearly student growth goals are optional.
Okay.
And that actually is very pragmatic because of how difficult it would be to do that coming off of the pandemic in the school year. So that was many districts took the freedom that was given by the state of Illinois and stopped doing evaluations this year. We felt it was not prudent to take, if we had some evaluations that weren't completed with the spring of the 1920 school year, then having the 2021 school year so interrupted, now the 21-22 school year, we felt like we had to continue with evaluation. So this was our attempt to honor the fact that there are a lot of complexities that come with working through a pandemic, but to not take a third consecutive year in some cases away from teacher evaluation. So that was the compromise we struck.
So we will be evaluating our non-tenured teachers?
Absolutely.
So that we know.
Any teacher in the district that is up for evaluation can and will be evaluated. What we have given some relief on is there's a student growth goal kind of that is baked into that, and we think through the Danielson framework, we can effectively evaluate teachers without that.
And I know you answered this, but so the scorecard is this year, but it's not part of the evaluation this year until it's in place. Then the Danielson piece will overlap and
Yes, we're going to see
you'll tell us about that when it happens.
That's right. Yeah, remember, last year we don't have a lot of usable data because of the low participation rates in testing, which you'll hear more about at the December board meeting when we talk about the last year's state tests.
Right, but the teacher evaluation is what I was referring to. So we do know, I mean. Anybody else think of anything before I move on? Ms. Mahan?
Yes, on standard 4, it refers to professional learning being available for all staff. And I'm curious if the professional learning, does this also encompass just equity work, like the stuff that's been done in the past with National Equity Project? Is it going to still be optional, or will it ever be mandatory, just so we can make sure that staff on all levels are addressing personal biases and things of that nature?
Yeah, the creation of what exactly is going to be presented and created isn't there yet with Dr. Brunson and the talent development team. She's working individually with buildings and where they're at for needs. But what's going to be created is certainly going to be aligned directly with the system-wide framework, which includes equity. So we'll have trainings on standards of practice, as well as where buildings feel they need additional support with equity. And so those are all being created in process now.
So we don't know if it's going to be optional or not, or we're still working on that?
Yeah, we haven't addressed what mandatory pieces yet. That's all part of the kind of tiered approach to the professional learning. What is mandatory, what's recommended, and what is optional. So as we work through those processes, that's going to be something that's discussed.
Thank you.
Okay. We're now on to the consent portion of our meeting, which will include items previewed by the board committee chairs during the committee of the whole meeting. From Performance and Monitoring Committee, we have the purchase orders, the construction pay request log, the RPS managed work change order log, the fiscal year 2022 first quarter treasurer's report, the IFB 2202 CNA DSP BTRN staffing coverage, which has been revised, the RFP 2217 asbestos consulting and design services, recurring contracts for small learning license renewal. We will also be voting on the consent agenda, from planning and development, which is the bond refunding, and finally, the consent items from the governance committee, which include the contract purchase orders, the worker compensation settlement agreement, the closed session minute release, and the freedom of information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any consent items board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, please call the roll on the approval of the consent items.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. Mohammed?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
We're now at the closed session consent agenda, which includes the closed session consent items of the appointment of Gregory Brown as the 12-month Chief Financial Officer and the HR organizational report and addendum. We also will approve the EIAs for 8308, 8309, 8310, 8311, and 8312. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any closed session consent items board members wish to have pulled? Seeing none, I'll ask you to call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Ms. Mohammed?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
Thank you. Anybody have any other business or new business or agenda recommendations that they'd like to bring to the board? I'd like to state my appreciation again for your participation in our board meeting and also your presentations. Thank you so very much. Hopefully you'll tell other board members wasn't super scary, I don't know. And you know, you might email us your email because it's not on this paper. And so that would be great to have. So thank you for that. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everybody who contributed to the wonderful fruit that we received as board members as recognition for Board Members Day. Thank you so much for thinking of us. I'll take, if there's no further comments, I will take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. You guys were a duo team here today, so all in favor? Any opposed, same sign? None. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.